So on this problem right here, do y'all feel like y'all have an understanding of this? What it's saying, it gives you this information, and then it says, is 3-1 a solution? But that's kind of vague. Do you know what it wants you to do right there? What it's asking you to do, see, 3 is an x value. 3 is an x value. 1 is a y value. It wants you to plug 3 and 1 into the equation to see if you get a true statement. So if your equation is x squared plus y squared equals 10, then you'll say 3 squared plus 1 squared equals 10. I get 9 plus 1 equals 10. 10 equals 10. That's a true statement. So the options it gives you is yes and no. So since it produced a true statement, it's going to be yes. Does that make any sense? So there's one on there, looks like negative 3x minus, oops, let me go back, I'm writing it down wrong. Negative 3y minus 6x equals negative 18. And the question says, find intercepts and graph. Well, there's several different ways to graph a function or a line. One way is to put it in slope intercept form, that's y equals form. But you can always leave it in this standard form right here and use an xy chart. And that's the safest way. No matter what you have a function of, no matter if it's a line or a curve, you can always use an xy chart to graph it. You can plug in an x and be produced with a y, input, output. But when it says specifically to find the intercepts, you'll use an xy chart and plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. So what I always do, even though I have my equation written down once already, I'll write it down again because I know I'm going to have to use it twice. And the very first thing I'm going to do is plug in 0 for x. So negative 3y minus 6 times 0 equals negative 18. 6 times 0 is 0. 3y minus 0 is 3y. So I get 3y equals negative 18. So y equals 6. That's the point 0, 6. Now I'm going to plug in this 0 right here for y. And we'll be produced with an x value. So 3 times 0 is 0. I end up with negative 6x equals negative 18. X equals positive 3. So that's the point 3, 0. So now, if we graph this line, 0, 6 is a y-intercept. That means you don't move on the x-axis, but you go up on the y-axis 6 units. So maybe this point right here. And then the point 3, 0, you move out 3 units on the x-axis, but that y value of 0 means you do not move up and down on the y-axis. This is a really good one because now this is not what I consider a hard question, but we're going to use midpoint later on to write the equation of a circle. So it's very important that we have an understanding of what midpoint is. Midpoint, when you find it, you're given two endpoints, and you're literally finding the middle, okay? You're literally finding what that middle point is. So what you're doing is you're plugging in x sub 1 and x sub 2. So x sub 2 would be your second x. X sub 1 is your first x. And then y sub 1, your first y, and y sub 2, your second y. The order can matter here, so just don't get them mixed up. I have a lot of people adding x and y and dividing it by 2. But it's your x and x, y and y. Okay, so all you want to do here is, I didn't mean for that to be blue, but whatever. That's 12 divided by 2, which is 6. 9 plus negative 4 is 5. And I get 5 halves. Now, whenever you type the answer in, it will tell you underneath that box the format it wants it in. It will say, I want an ordered pair, and I want it to be simplified fractions or either decimals. And this particular one asks for an ordered pair with decimals. So it would count that answer wrong, and it would want 2.5. That's a rare occasion that it wants decimals. A lot of times it wants fractions. I'm not too picky. Now, I do like for you to read the directions, but if you have the correct answer, I'll go back and give you credit. I want to work an easier equation of a circle first. The equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So if you're looking at the equation of a circle, the center of that circle is h and k. And it's really interesting whenever you're looking at the equation and then you're asked the center, because when you're asked the center, you write down the opposite sign that you see. You see in the equation, I saw a minus h, but I wrote down for the center a positive h. And in the equation, I see a minus k, but for the center, I wrote down a positive k. So what I'm given on this particular problem is a center of 2, -5, and a radius of 1/5. And it's asking me to write the equation of the circle. What's the equation of the circle? So x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. You're like, Dr. Morris, why are you writing this down again? You've already got it written down. Well, first of all, it's up there, and I'm working down here, okay? I'm down here now. I don't have to rewrite it. That's not part of the steps, but the more I write it, the easier it is to memorize. So do that. Anytime you have a chance to write a formula, write an equation, write it down again, because that's memorization. So basically, I have x minus something plus y minus something squared. Okay, well, my center is, that h value is 2. The k value is -5. The radius is 1/5. So when I go to actually simplify this, if you type it in like this, it's going to be wrong. It's just x minus 2, y plus 5. 1 squared is 1, 5 squared is 25. A lot of people are forgetting to do that, to square both the numerator and the denominator. And this would be our answer. Notice on that h and k that they gave us, the center over here, it was 2 and -5. But in the final answer for the equation of the circle, those signs were changed. It's now -2 and +5. Okay, so that's always going to happen. When you are looking at the center and then looking at the equation, those signs are going to be different. They're going to be the opposite. Are we okay with that? Okay, so now we're going to do a real... So there's going to be several things happening in this problem, okay? But at the end of the day, it wants an equation of a circle. So just remember what that equation is. This is another opportunity to write it down. What we type into the computer is going to look something like this. It's going to be in this form, okay? But let's go back over what exactly is in this. There's a center at HK, and then there's a radius on the end that is squared, okay? Well, let's look at what we're given. Are we given a center? I said, here's endpoints. Are we given a center? No. Are we given a radius? No. So we have to find both. Okay. I'm actually going to start with, I think I'm going to start with the radius, okay? Because I think that's the hardest part. And I probably shouldn't say it like that, but what people are doing, they're finding the midpoint first, and then that was so much work and they think they're done. Well, we're going to do the radius first. Okay, so if I'm going to use the distance formula. Okay, so I'm going to use the distance formula between two endpoints right here, okay? This is my two endpoints. I'm going to find that distance. That line that I just drew, let's make it a different color. It's yellow now. Is that a radius? No, it's not. What is it? That line is called, if it goes the whole, from endpoint to endpoint, it's a diameter. I don't know why I couldn't think this morning. So, distance formula between two endpoints produces a diameter. We need the radius. So we're going to take the diameter that we find and then divide it by 2. Okay? We good so far? So for instance, if that yellow line right there that I drew, if that were 10, if the diameter were 10, what would the radius be? 5. Yeah. Okay, but let's look at the equation of a circle one more time. Does that say equals r? Or does that say something a little bit different? R squared. So once we find the radius, we need r squared. So the radius squared will equal the diameter over 2 squared. Okay, and this is what people are forgetting to do right here, okay? So, and it can be a very pretty thing, or it can get very funky looking, okay? So just know that. And you'll end up with something like the diameter over possibly 4 if that top part doesn't simplify. So let's go back, and I'm just going to review something. We said if that line right there, if that yellow line is equal to 10, the radius is equal to 5. Well, that's because 10 divided by 2 is a pretty number. It's a pretty number. It's just 5. But you won't always get a pretty number. It may stay a fraction, okay? So it may be something like 7 over 2. But since it was a pretty number, since the radius was 5, when we square it, it's going to be pretty. It's going to be 25. But if it were, let's go off to the side. If the diameter were, I said 7, but let's actually make it the square root of 7. We're just pretending, okay? If the diameter were the square root of 7, then the radius, can anyone tell me right off the top of their head what the square root of 7 divided by 2 is? No, and it's not pretty. We're not going to type it in our calculator. We're going to leave it like this. Just like that. But again, that's not what the equation of a circle is asking for. It's asking for r squared. So you then need to square the square root of 7 and square 2. So the square root of 7 squared takes the root off, and you're just left with 7. And 2 squared is 4. Okay, so let's find the distance between those 2 points. The distance formula, I'm going to try to write formulas in blue. So we're going to plug those values at the top in, okay? So let's, I think the highlighter helped last time. I'm going to use that highlighter again. So x1 goes here, and this is x1. And x2 goes here, and this is x2. y1 goes here, and this is y1. y2 goes here, and this is y2. So is everyone okay with where I got those values from? How you see how I plugged it in? Okay, so we're going to simplify that down. 1 minus 4 is negative 3. Be careful right here. Negative 1 minus a negative 1, that's like saying negative 1 plus 1, that's 0. So I end up with the square root of 9. What is the square root of 9? 3. So 3 is the diameter, okay? The radius is 3 over 2. Well, you're like, whoa, let me put that in my calculator. No, don't put it in your calculator. For that radius and the diameter, when you're simplifying that, do not put it in your calculator. You want to leave it as a fraction. And it doesn't feel natural to you, just do it, okay? But am I done? Is this what I need for the formula? No, I need to square it. So the radius squared is 3 squared, which is 9, and 2 squared, which is 4. So technically, I could go back up here and write 9 over 4 right there, but I'm not going to do that yet. Now I'm going to find the midpoint. The midpoint formula, which we just did, the sum of your x's divided by 2, and the sum of your y's divided by 2. And I'll go ahead and, oops, Johnny, highlight it like I did the last one. Wait, Johnny, I'm wrong. See, I was trying to be creative and I got it wrong. X1 is yellow. On this coordinate up here, X2 is green. Y1 up there is blue. And Y2 is red. Okay. Now, let's plug it in. Okay, is everyone okay with how I got that? How I got the midpoint? You see where I plugged, where I got the numbers from that I plugged in and how I simplified it down? And again, leave it as fractions. So now we're going to write down that equation of a circle one more time, just because now we're about to put it all together. We have what we need. We said we needed a center, we needed a midpoint, and we needed a radius squared. Well, that center was 5/2. So it's going to go in as x minus 5/2. And then y, if I have minus a -1, that goes in as y plus 1. And now you can see what I was talking about, where the center, where the coordinates of the h and k, when you plug it in, it has different signs, okay? Equals 9/4. And you're done with that. So we're going to do the same thing, and y'all don't have, if you want to watch, watch. You don't have to. We're going to look for the equation of a circle, and these are the endpoints. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is find the diameter, so that then I can find the radius, and then the radius squared. And the diameter will use the distance formula. And I don't know why I wrote the word diameter there, so let me erase it. I'm going to just use this distance formula. X minus x squared plus y minus y squared equal, yeah, that's it. Sorry, I was about to try to write the equation of a circle. Okay, so the square root of 2, and be careful with your signs, 2 minus -1. I don't care if you go ahead and put that in there as 2 plus 1, but see, little things like that can get us messed up. Okay, y minus y, so that would be 4 minus 1. Don't get lazy and just quit writing your square root and think, oh, I'll take the square root at the end, because you'll forget to take the square root. Okay, so just keep writing it every time. 2 minus -1, that's like saying 2 plus 1, so 3 squared plus 4 minus 1 is 3 squared. I end up getting the square root of 9 plus 9, which is the square root of 18. So what did we say the square root of 18, since we found the distance between two endpoints? The square root of 18 is equal to, what is it, the diameter, the radius? What is it equal to? The diameter. And remember, I need the radius squared. So let's keep finding it. Okay, so the radius is just going to be half the diameter. Okay, well, this is about to blow your mind a little bit. Do I need to put that in my calculator? No. No. You want to so bad. And this just doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. But look, it's half of the diameter, literally. Divide it by 2. Or just kind of say you're going to divide it by 2, right? That's what you're doing. And then we really need the radius squared. So what we do is we take the square root of 18 and square it. And we take 2 and square it. To end up with 18 over 4. Which simplifies into 9 over 2. So I've got one thing that I need for my circle. That's going to go on the end, that 9 over 2. The next thing that I need is the midpoint. So the midpoint formula, the midpoint will produce a center. But the midpoint is the sum of the x's divided by 2 and the sum of the y's divided by 2. Y'all, isn't this crazy? Like the distance formula, your x's are together, your y's are together. The midpoint formula, your x's are together, your y's are together. But one of them uses subtraction, the other uses addition. And you're like, how am I going to remember that? Well, you see how many times I've written this down over and over and over again. I write it down every time, even though I could look at a sheet of paper and just plug in. It's more responsible to just write it down. You'll memorize it. You'll engrave it in your head. Okay, so x and x. Okay, so that's 2 plus -1 and y plus y. That's 4 plus 1. That simplifies into 1/2. 4 plus 1 is 5, so we got 5/2. So watch as we put this thing into the equation of a circle. So look, people, this is like 3 different formula type things that we've had to memorize for this one problem. And just memorizing it doesn't even matter. You have to know how to use it. So I'm not really using that equation of a circle that I've memorized until the very end. Okay, so the midpoint, notice the midpoint, the HK was positive. It came out as positive 1/2, positive 5/2. But when we put it in that equation of a circle, it changes sign, really. Oops, sorry, people. Sorry, that's why, yeah. Yeah, whatever. And we're done.